Do you have a social media policy for your employees?
No, we don't. I mean, we have, I guess intuitively, I don't understand what is different about a social media policy than a general conduct policy, which we do have. So About is owned by the New York Times Company. The conduct policies at a newspaper company, generally, and of course at a company that's a paper of record like the Times, tend to be stringent, and they tend to be things that we are all very mindful of. And I don't see a need for our team to be told anything more than what I think they already know and would already do as responsible and mindful, ethical team members.
What about Forrester?
Yeah.
So I can answer just both ways, both from an external perspective and internal. At Forrester, we are, in some ways, we're part of the same community.
Right.
We actually went through a process last year of preventing people from publishing on their own blogs. When blogging first started, we allowed people to have their own blogs, and they could publish content. And what happened was they were publishing too much content, and we were basically giving away our business model in a way. So. And it's hard to police that, except to say if you're an analyst, you have one choice: you have to blog on our site because you are now a content producer, and that is your responsibility to the world, is to give the appropriate level of content outside the community and to reserve the real insight for the people who are paying a lot of money to be part of our world. So we've pulled back on what was the original policy. We had to create a new social media policy. We had to provide the tools for them, obviously, so we had to build some tools before we could put the policy in place. That was definitely part of the issue. And then the social media policy beyond the blogging is you don't tweet about a client, you don't tweet about coming out of a client meeting where you just learned something unbelievable, because that's not what they're paying us for, is to tell the world something that is supposed to be private. So I actually noticed since I rejoined the company in 2009, how much less I tweet now than when I was a CMO of a public company, which I was sort of surprised about. I would think I would actually have had more opportunity to say things about what I'm observing, but I find that I actually hold back more now because the content that I put out there, it has a different kind of influence. So that's how we look at it. From a corporate perspective, for those of you who are not in the media business, we actually think social media policy is critical, but I completely agree with you that it is, if it doesn't follow the rules of general conduct, then you're looking at it differently, but ultimately an employee is an employee, whether they're tweeting something that has broad distribution or they're on the phone with somebody and that has narrow distribution. It's still an issue of how are they communicating the values of the company. What we have seen, though, is CMOs feel empowered to use that policy to get people on the same page about the brand. So if they do get people to talk about the brand outside of their four walls, or however many walls they have, once they get outside of the company, there are certain guidelines that they've actually been able to use this as training to say, if you are going to talk about the company or the fact that you are an employee of the company, here are the guidelines about which you should be saying that, and here are the things that you should talk about because we want you to be an ambassador for the brand. So it's given the marketing side some empowerment to say, of the either 100 or 100,000 people that work for the company, here's a way for you to talk about us in a way that's positive and encourage them to do that part of it. But otherwise, not say anything that, as my first corporate policy when I was a new employee was, you can do anything as long as you didn't embarrass the company. That was the only requirement on a personal level. I thought, well, okay, I just won't talk about who I work for, but obviously you can embarrass the company pretty easily in social media.
What about with iVillage and NBC ownership and now Comcast?
I would say it's very similar to what Chella had said, is that both GE and Comcast had a very high level of integrity that each employee has to agree to. And so on that level, it is just part of the general conduct. I would say within the activities that my team runs, when we do have either a Twitter view where one of the editors is positioned as an expert, or that they do have some interactivity with the Facebook page. I mean, it's general guidelines on how they should handle themselves, which is something you really don't have to tell them.